Good afternoon. Please be seated. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Legislative Assembly of Alberta. My name is Nathan Cooper, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Speaker of this storied institution. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this observation of Black Ribbon Day. Firstly, I would like to welcome our platform party, the Honourable Mike Ellis, the Deputy Premier, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Service, who is here on behalf of the Premier of Alberta. Ms. Nicole Goring, the MLA for Edmonton Castle Downs, who is with us today on behalf of the Leader of the Official Opposition, Ms. Notley. Mr. John Shumlis, the Honourable Council of Poland in Edmonton. Mr. Jerry Boma, Chair of the Edmonton Councillor Corps and the Honorary Council for the Netherlands in Edmonton. Ms. Greta de Roos, President of the Canadian Polish Congress, Alberta Society. Reverend Father Payonk from Mary Immaculate. And I'd also like to take a moment to welcome our violinist, Tatiana Warshinsky, who I look forward to hearing from her later in the program. I'd also like to recognize just a few folks who've joined us today. I see there are numerous ministers of the Government of Alberta, including but not limited to the Honourable Government House Leader, Member Scow, Minister Furr, Minister LaGrange, Minister Wilson, and apologies to others who I may have missed. I do see a number of members of the Assembly of both government and opposition. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. I also see the Ombudsman for Public Interest and Commissioner, Mr. Kevin Brzezinski. Please welcome all of these individuals to our ceremony today. "84 years ago today, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union created an alliance so destructive that it started the Second World War. This alliance is better known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which resulted in violence, victimization, and years of persecution against many European people. People may ask, why remember this day, the signing of this pact? When we remember our history and our past, we do so to try to prevent it from happening again in the future. We remember the millions of souls who lost their lives during this devastating alliance, and we remember the legacies of those who died and those who suffered as a result of this pact. Today, Alberta is home to over 600,000 people of Eastern European ancestry, and contributions from Eastern European communities have been essential to building our province and assisting in what it is today. From excellence in agriculture to colorful artistic endeavors, they continue to model a unique and unparalleled work ethic and an unmatched living with joy. My hope is that we all resolve to look upon the horrific events of the past and renew our resolutions to recognize the importance of human rights, kindness, and decency. Days like today rekindle discussions about the importance of our human lives and, importantly, our freedoms. Alberta has been built by people of all different backgrounds, a fact in which we can all rejoice. And we are all reminded to take efforts to uphold our democracy by respecting each other's similarities and our differences. As you listen to our revered group of speakers today, remember that only in unity can we continue to prosper as a thriving province. Together, we are each responsible to remember our past, and to look forward to an Alberta that continues to be strong and free. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the Honorable Mike Ellis to the lectern to provide remarks on behalf of the Premier of Alberta. Mr. Ellis.
Thank you, sir. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am Mike Ellis. I am the Deputy Premier of the province, and it's certainly an honor to bring greetings on behalf of Premier Daniel Smith and, of course, Alberta's government. I stand before you today with heavy heart as we approach a day of remembrance that holds profound significance in our collective history. We came together this afternoon to honor the 84th anniversary of the signing of the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, or, as Mr. Speaker had indicated, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between Nazi Germany and the Communist Soviet Union. Black Ribbon Day serves as a tender reminder of the atrocities that have scarred our world in the past. It is a day when we reflect on the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the enduring courage of those who resisted tyranny. As we raise our voices in unity, we pay homage to the unwavering spirit that emerged from the darkest of times. This day is not only about looking back, but also about standing up against intolerance, injustice in our time. It's a call to action for each of us to safeguard the principles of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. By remembering the lessons of history, we empower ourselves to confront the challenges of the present and shape our better future for generations to come. It's so important that we reaffirm this commitment regularly. As we wear our black ribbons today, let us remember that the struggles of the past were not in vain. They laid the foundation for the freedoms we enjoy today. It's our duty to honor the memory of those who came before us by ensuring that their sacrifices were not forgotten. Together, we can uphold the values of inclusivity, diversity, and the inherent worth of every individual. On the Black Ribbon Day, let us recommit ourselves to the pursuit of justice and equality. Let us pledge to be vigilant against any forces that seek to undermine the principles that define us. As we gather in unity, let us send a clear message that our resolve to create a world free from oppression remains unshaken. Thank you for joining me to commemorate Black Ribbon Day. May the spirit of remembrance and resilience guide our path in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. I'd now like to invite Ms. Nicole Goring to speak on behalf of the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition. Ms. Goring is the MLA for Edmonton Castle Downs and His Majesty's Loyal Opposition Liaison to the Canadian Military and Veterans Affairs.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to join you in remembering and honoring those who were victimized by the Soviet and Nazi regimes. On August 23, 1939, a document was signed that changed the course of history. This agreement would go on to be one of the most sinister alliances in the history of the world, resulting in atrocities committed against millions of the Eastern European population. Many of these people fled their homes and families, became refugees, and traveled a great distance to settle on our beautiful prairie lands. They brought with them the scars of battle fought, overwhelming grief and sadness, and some of them arrived alone without their family or friends, but they also brought with them tenacity, a thirst for freedom, and an unwavering loyalty to their culture. Today, we remember what was lost, which is sometimes necessary to avoid repeating the same ugly patterns. Only knowledge of past missteps can help us move forward, recognizing that human life and democracy are two of our most precious assets. Although recent global events may lead us to believe that history is repeating itself, I prefer to believe that here in Canada, especially here in Alberta, we can band together to fight against tyranny and exclusivity and to ensure Alberta is a safe and comfortable home for everyone, a place where different cultures can not only exist, but thrive together. As we remember those we have lost, let us also remember the importance of human kindness and what we can do to help our fellow Albertans prosper. We all stand together, we grieve together, and we are hopeful together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goring. I'm now pleased and honored to provide for our ceremony a number 3, to be exact, of pre-recorded messages from 3 ambassadors: the ambassador of Hungary, the ambassador of Latvia, followed and will conclude with the ambassador of Poland.
Honorable Speaker, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to say a few words at the Black Ribbon Day commemoration. And I would like to thank the President of the Canadian-Hungarian Heritage Council and Regional President of the Hungarian Diaspora Council, Mrs. Anna Szente, for this opportunity. On August 23rd, in 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union entered into a pact that paved the way to the Second World War, bringing devastation and suffering to millions of people. On this day, we commemorate the victims of 2 brutal dictatorships of the 20th century, Nazism and communism. Hungary, just as many European countries, was tragically affected by the destruction of both of these totalitarian regimes. Men, women, and children were murdered, imprisoned, tortured, deported, and deprived of their human rights and dignity. Their properties were confiscated, their culture, faith, and values suppressed. It is important that we remember the victims and learn the lessons of the brutality of Nazism and communism. It is also important to pay tribute to those brave heroes who try to help, often risking their own lives in those darkest chapters of history. Millions of Canadians of Central and Eastern European descent, whose families were directly affected by Nazi or communist crimes, have found a new home in Canada. They have also contributed to Canada's cultural, economic, and social development. I am grateful for the opportunity to remember the victims of Nazism and communism jointly with our Central and Eastern European compatriots in Canada. I am also proud to say that the Hungarian Revolution and Freedom Fight in 1956 was not only a brave attempt to get rid of the communist dictatorship, but it also made the first crack on the Iron Curtain. After regaining its freedom and independence in 1989, Hungary has become Canada's ally, and we have been active members of NATO for a quarter of a century. Black Ribbon Day is a memento, reminding all of us of the importance of protecting democracy and freedom, and to educate future generations about the devastation that Nazism and communism brought on millions of people. Because we cannot take democracy and freedom for granted. Russia's aggression in Ukraine underscores that. We should always stand up for the truth, reject extremism, intolerance and oppression, and the deprivation of human and minority rights. This is exactly the reason why the Hungarian government has contributed financially to the establishment of the Memorial for the Victims of Communism in Ottawa. We truly hope that the memorial will be inaugurated later this year and will forever remind us of our duty to stand up against oppression. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Honorable Speaker, dear members of the Assembly and the Government, dear community members and attendees, thank you for upkeeping the annual tradition of commemorating the Black Ribbon Day in Edmonton, Alberta. That is greatly appreciated by the embassies of Central European countries and our diasporas in Alberta. I think that the Black Ribbon Day cannot be marked today irrespective of current context. In light of massive aggression of Russia against Ukraine last year, the Black Ribbon Day acquired renewed contemporary meaning. Today, Black Ribbon Day shouldn't remain only a day of remembrance of victims, it has to become a day of action. It has to become a day of invigorated action in support of a country and people that on a daily basis continue to experience savagery of authoritarian successor of an original party to the Secret Pact of 1939. We should support Ukraine today and should help to seek justice down the road. Crimes should never go unpunished, especially war crimes and crimes against humanity. We will continue our efforts to establish a special international tribunal that will hold Russia's top leadership accountable. We believe that support to Ukraine is the best tribute to the memory of past and present day's victims of authoritarian regimes. And we believe that all of us have to do it together. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Speaker, Excellencies, members of diplomatic missions, members of the House of Commons, members of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, distinguished members of First Nations and community leaders, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Szanowni Państwo. Let me congratulate you on your dedication in remembering things that matter. The history is our great teacher. Those that are able to learn from it, to use it, are becoming great leaders, and they are able to take responsibility for a better future. The outbreak of the Second World War, which began on September 1, 1939, with the invasion on Poland by Germany, is one of the events that is annually commemorated all over Europe, but also globally. The following Soviet incursion into Polish territory over 2 weeks later tends to be remembered less. It is very important that on this day we remember about both of those tragic contexts. On August 23, 1939, foreign ministers of Germany and Soviet Union signed in Moscow a non-aggression pact. A non-aggression pact, imagine that. A non-aggression pact that resulted in a 5-year-long horrid war that raged all over the world. In Poland, it resulted in about 6 million people being murdered, destruction of infrastructure, culture, social life. It was anything but non-aggressive. Today, as we mark the 84th anniversary of this treacherous and secretive Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, we join in reflection on the pain and suffering under those two totalitarian regimes. Unfortunately, this reflection leads us to the present. With the war raging in Ukraine, we see that the Russian-Soviet instincts for aggression did not disappear. Trying to look at the positive, I assure you that the free world yet again stands united against totalitarianism, aggression and hate. Due to our dramatic historic experience with Russia, as well as our deeply ingrained belief in freedom and the right of countries and societies to choose their own future, Poland, from the very beginning, in many respects, was on the lead in terms of support for Ukraine and stability and security for the eastern NATO flank. We do learn from our history, and we are grateful to those who are willing to take time, listen to us, and work with us in order to make the world a better place. In this spirit, allow me to thank all the Canadian friends from Alberta, including the large Polish community, for your important initiative on the Black Ribbon Day. Thank you.
A thank you to the ambassadors for taking the time to send us those important videos. You know, as time passes, from the violence and devastation, it is easy to lose track of the impact that this aggression pact had on the face of our world. And I was reminded, as I was listening to the ambassador of Poland, when he said that over 6 million people in Poland were killed as a result of this aggression. And it really struck me that that would equate to every man, woman, and child in the entire province of Alberta and Saskatchewan vanished from the face of the earth. And it still doesn't reach the level of impact that it had on one country alone. I think it is a stark reminder of the impact that these events had on the face of our earth, and I appreciate all of the ambassador's words with respect to the unprovoked aggression of Vladimir Putin and his war criminals. I'd also like to now invite Mr. John Shumlus, the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Poland in Edmonton, to provide remarks. Mr. Shumlus is well known around the legislature building, having worked in various ministries in the past, has been a great advocate and supporter of the Speaker's office with respect to ensuring that we can bring all of you together here for this important day. Mr. Shumlus.
You know, with an introduction like that, Mr. Speaker, it's going to be very difficult to give my comments. But before I do, Mr. Speaker, special guests all, let me introduce a few people that are in our audience that are well-deserved of recognition. You know, we're honored that our good friend, the Consul General of Ukraine, Alexander Danilenko, is with us. We thank a man who is extremely busy, and we thank you very much for participating and attending our event today. Mr. John Tomczak, who is our national president of the Polish Canadian Congress, nationally, just returned from Poland, and we do think that he's recovered from his jet lag to be with us, and we thank him very much. We know that Xander Voros is with us, and Xander is the new president, and he brought his lovely wife with him, and, you know, our outstanding black ribbon provider each and every year, Eva. But Xander, congratulations on your new appointment as the president of the Canadian-Hungarian Society, and thank you very much for attending. And Orysia, I've seen Orysia Boychuk is with us as well. Oh, there's Orysia, and she is the president of the Ukrainian Congress Alberta branch. Mr. Speaker, today marks the 13th year that I have chaired a dedicated group of volunteers to organize this event. 13 years. We each year since the year 2020, with the exception of the year, each year since 2010, with the exception of 2020, due to the pandemic, we have assembled here to remember the horror that evil leaders can set in motion. We've been honored to have Black Ribbon Day here in the People's House and hosted by the speakers of 3 provincial governments, the Progressive Conservative, the New Democratic, and the United Conservative parties. Friends, this commitment from our political leaders, no matter their political stripes, is a true testament of the duty that each and every one of us must always be in guard against the tyranny of despots. Today, August 23rd, 2023, the madman of Moscow has for 546 days attempted to silence our Ukrainian cousins. Never would I have imagined that war in Europe would occur. My World War II deported parents constantly reminded their 5 sons that we must never cast aside our individual responsibility to be on guard, to prevent a new Hitler, a new Stalin, from eliminating a free press and smothering the population with lies and lies and more lies. Each year, I've stood before you to draw attention to the hideous crimes against humanity that totalitarian regimes inflicted upon innocent individuals. Sadly, each and every day, since February 24th, 2022, our media broadcasts the assault on an innocent people by the madman of Moscow, one of the signature countries of that infamous so-called non-aggression pact. That date, August 23, 1939, set the course for Nazi Germany from the west. 3 weeks later, the Soviet Union from the east to undertake their evil. Friends, it was February 10th, 1940, when the first of thousands of cattle cars commenced transporting innocent women and children from eastern Poland to the gulags of the frozen lands of Siberia. We are honored that one of those who were transported then was in short pants and only a few years old. Young Wilhelm Horkevich is with us. Wilhelm, do stand. You know, he was on one of those cattle cars. He and his family were sent to what was known as the White Crematorium. 500,000 people were sent, only 200,000 ever made it out. You know, on the 14th of June of that same year of 1940, the first mass transport of 728 Polish prisoners by Nazi Germany to Auschwitz concentration camp took place. On arrival at Auschwitz, these words were the greetings from the acting commandant. "You have not come here to a sanatorium, but to a German concentration camp, and there is no other way out than through the chimney of the crematorium. If one does not like that, they can throw themselves on the electric wire immediately. If there are Jews in the transport, they are allowed to live no more than 2 weeks. Priests, 1 month, and the rest, 3 months." I ask myself why. Why is it as humans we are not able to solve problems with words, but only with bombs, bullets, and brutality? As Martin Luther King Jr. taught us, in the end, we will remember not the words of the enemies, but the silence of our friends. We all must not be silent. Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to conclude by thanking on behalf of all of us to you for granting us an opportunity to again come together here in the People's House to reflect upon the impact of August 23rd, some 84 years ago. Mr. Speaker, I do wish to acknowledge and thank Teresa Schlamfriga, past President, Canadian Polish Congress, Alberta, for her unwavering assistance with me over the many years in organizing this event. Father Payak, thank you very much for kindly agreeing to fill in for your brother, who is our parish priest in Mary Queen of Poland, and our parish priest is currently on vacation visiting his mother in Poland. Our talented musician, Tatiana Warszawska, who has for so many years honored us with distinguished talent. I know the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra has a large hole to fill now that you have retired. You're too young to retire, but you retired after so many outstanding years of service. As you entered in today, you're provided with a black ribbon. Each and every year, the Hungarian Cultural Society, in cooperation with the Honorary Consul of Hungary, has provided them. Thank you again, Eva, for doing that. To our community speakers, your thoughtful words are most appreciative. And finally, without question, Mr. Speaker, your outstanding office staff, led by your executive assistant, Katja Ojos, who is both extremely well organized, but more importantly, so professional. For all of that, we do want to say to Katja, thank you. And last but not least, thank you to each and every one of you to come here, the home of Alberta's democracy, and to all those who are watching at home on the internet. Thank you. Slava Ukraini. Let us all not be silent. Let us all pray for peace. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your powerful words, and thank you for introducing a number of our other special guests that have joined us today. And I, too, would like to pass along a word of encouragement from all members of the Legislative Assembly to Council General Danilenko in your ongoing fight for freedom for the people of Ukraine. Please know that every member of the Assembly is a supporter of yours, of Ukraine, and of freedom. Slava Ukraini. It's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Jerry Bomer, the Honorable Counsel for the Netherlands in Edmonton, to provide his remarks.
Mr. Speaker, Your Excellencies, the three ambassadors who addressed us, honorable members of the legislature, Consul General, honorary consuls, ladies and gentlemen. In 1866, Fyodor Dostoevsky, the great Russian author, published his famous novel, Crime and Punishment. Midway through the novel, a chilling conversation takes place between the intellectually gifted protagonist, Raskolnikov, and the perceptive, persistent inspector, Porfiry Petrovich. It focuses on the phenomena of the Uberman, or Superman, a person vastly superior to the norm, and therefore entitled, according to Raskolnikov, to take any and all actions, including those criminal, to achieve his or her objectives. Objectives, by virtue of the Uberman's superiority, would be deemed to make for a better society. Dostoevsky's prescience and the full consequence of this thought experiment was doubly fulfilled less than 70 years later. The rise of the Uberman on the left and the rise of the Uberman on the right. Particularly shocking with this agreement had been the avowed pledge by Hitler, the right, already stated clearly in Mein Kampf years earlier, to wipe out communism and the Soviet Union off the face of the earth. No one saw this agreement coming, an agreement between two sworn enemies. The infamous Non-Aggression Pact, signed on this day in 1939, put the final pieces in place to unleash a period of unparalleled aggression, death, and destruction. The first casualty was Poland, only 9 days later, and of course the beginning of World War II. And perhaps no country suffered more than Poland, with two invading forces, and then the ravaging of the country for the next 50 years, first by Germany in the West, and then by the Soviet Union until 1989. Thank you, John, for your leadership in bringing attention to this sad, sad day. And I should add, within months, my grandparents and my parents, who were at that time bewildered 10 years old, were suddenly under the boot of Nazi Germany. So what are we to learn? First, that evil ideology, no matter how it is supported intellectually, is still evil. Secondly, that evil leadership is never far away. And thirdly, that good people have no choice but to stand against such forces, and in failing to do so, we do at our own peril. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. It's now my great pleasure to invite Miss Greta de Roos, the President of the Canadian Polish Congress, Alberta Society, to provide her remarks.
Mr. Speaker and special guests, we gather together on this solemn occasion to observe, remember, and pay homage to the victims and survivors of Nazism and Stalinism. Black Ribbon Day marks the anniversary of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was signed on this day in 1939 between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany and resulted in the division of Poland and the annexation of the Baltic states, as well as part of Romania, by the Soviet Union. The ensuing occupations by these brutal totalitarian regimes led to the deaths of millions of people across Central and Eastern Europe and eventually created a new geopolitical stage for Eastern Europe. This is a day of remembrance for the victims and survivors of totalitarian and authoritarian regimes. The Black Awareness Ribbon is a symbol for mourning and remembrance for those experiencing sadness, loss, and suffering. Each ribbon worn tells a story. Each thread weaves an intricate narrative as it is entwined on as well as in our hearts. As I wear my ribbon today, I recall my family's story. Both my parents immigrated to Canada after World War II. My mother was born prior to the Second World War in a town in Poland, which is now part of Lithuania. She was one of an estimated 1.7 million of Siberian exiles deported in cattle cars, together with her mother, my grandmother, and siblings, one of whom is present with us today and was introduced earlier on, Mr. William Hodkiewicz. They faced severe and bitter cold, gnawing and persistent hunger, rampant diseases, the most appalling conditions imaginable. My grandfather during this time had been sent to a Soviet prison work camp, a gulag, whereupon his release, he was merely a shadow of a man. My father, who was also born prior to World War II in Poland, escaped during Stalinist times. He was an engineering student, and in 1951, he and two of his colleagues could no longer live in a country that was dominated by communist rule, a country that did not espouse the pre-war values of its predecessors. They decided to swim across the Oder River and claim refugee status in Germany. During the war, my father's father served as an officer in the Polish army fighting at D-Day. One of my great-uncles, another Polish officer, was murdered by the Soviets in the Katyn forest in 1940, together with close to 22 other thousand people. While another uncle had his young life come to a brutally abrupt halt in the gas chambers of Auschwitz in 1944. The black ribbon of both Soviet and Nazi regimes is threaded into the tapestry of my family's narrative. Mine is merely one of countless ribbons. Today, people who have gathered here today have their story as well, and those who are not with us today. One cannot talk about Black Ribbon Day without respectfully paying homage to the estimated 6 million European Jews who perished in the Holocaust. Estimates of the total number of people killed during World War II are close to 60 million. I have mentioned numbers a few times throughout my address. Please do not misunderstand. Statistics are important, especially to statisticians, historians, as they define a particular scale. However, with reverence to the subject matter, we need to focus on something beyond the numbers. Every number constitutes a human being. Behind every statistic, every number, there is a human being. We must always remember that they were first and above all human beings. They were people stripped of their dignity, human rights, language, culture, names, in essence, their identity. These were people who, prior to the insanity of the Second World War, had vibrant lives. Lives prior to forcible and chaotic uprooting. Lives carving out paths for their future. Countless dreams that were never realized because of these totalitarian and authoritarian regimes. What unites many of us gathered here today is not only our pain, the suffering of our loved ones, but the fact that we remember those who perished at the hands of Soviet and Nazi oppressors, that we are gathered here today in the home of democracy here in Alberta, in the defense of human rights, freedom, and democracy. It is our sense of responsibility to honor the above. Today, we wear this ribbon as we remember and pay homage to the victims and survivors of totalitarian and authoritarian regimes, both past and present. Unfortunately, in 2023, as we speak and sit here today, there are victims of Russia's ongoing genocidal war against Ukraine. Today, we stand in solidarity with Ukraine and our Ukrainian community, including the thousands of displaced Ukrainians who have arrived in our province since Russia's brutal, aggressive, and unprovoked invasion. We can only hope that the valor, courage, and resilience of the Ukrainian people will be met with a victorious end in the near future. Black Ribbon Day, may we always remember, and may peace prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta, and a special thank you for sharing your personal story and connection to Black Ribbon Day, the ways that it impacted your lives and set the course of your family's future. We are all better because you've shared your story today, so thank you. And also a very special thank you for William for your attendance here today. Please join me in thanking him for connecting us. I'd now like to invite Reverend Father Michael Payonk to provide the invocation.
Before I invite you to join me in prayer, I wanted to say the brief comments regarding today's anniversary, the sad day, when two atheist ideologies, the German Nazi and the Soviet Union, signed no aggressive pact against Europe, against the whole humanity. And it is good to remember that these two ideologies, they were atheists. They completely rejected the existence of God. Like Fyodor Dostoevsky quoted today, said, if there is no God in our life, the man can do everything. There is no respect for anyone. And we can see, when we look back at the history, what are the consequences of these atheist ideologies, which started the bloody time in the history of the human being. And I wanted just to say that in my home family diocese in Poland, 50% of the clergy, they were killed by the Germans. When the Bolshevik took a power in Russia, a Nazi as well in Germany, they targeting those who believe in God. They targeting the Christianity, Judaism. And now I wanted to invite you to join me in the prayer for peace. Lord Jesus Christ, you are called the Prince of Peace, who are yourself our peace and reconciliation, who so often said, "Peace to you, grant us peace. Make all men and women witnesses of truth, justice, and brotherly love. Banish from their hearts whatever might endanger peace. Enlighten our rulers that they may guarantee and defend the great gift of peace. May all the peoples of the earth become as brothers and sisters. May long for peace blossom forth and reign always over us all. O God, creator of the universe, who extends your paternal concern over every creature and guides the events of history to the goal of salvation, we acknowledge your fatherly love when you break the resistance of mankind and, in a world torn by strife and discord, you make us ready for reconciliation. Renew for us the wonders of your mercy. Send forth your Spirit that he may work in the intimacy of hearts, that enemies may begin to dialogue, that adversaries may shake hands, and peoples may encounter one another in harmony. May all commit themselves to the sincere search for true peace, which will extinguish all arguments, for charity, which overcomes hatred, for pardon, which disarms revenge.
For those of you who are able, I invite you to please rise as we take a moment of silence to honor the victims and survivors. Please be seated. Brings me great pleasure to invite Tatiana Warshinsky to perform Kuyevayak in A minor. Thank you so much, Tatiana. I just recently learned that you had recently retired from the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. If you're looking for a place to rehearse, I happen to know someone who has keys to the place. You'd always be welcome to do so here in the Rotunda. That was spectacular. You know, I really do want to thank all of those who have joined us here today, and in particular the heartfelt tributes of many who have shared with us today about the many lives lost on this fateful date more than 84 years ago. And I want to encourage us to remind us all to look to each other as friends and not enemies. And you know, days like today can be very somber and sad, and they ought to be. But together, we can look forward to a bright and prosperous future for our province and our world, one where hope and light springs eternal, where peace and freedom is the bedrock of our society. Those things are only accomplished when individuals like those in this room and those who are observing this important day in our history come together to stand up against tyranny and evil. So let us fill this building, our communities, and our province with respect and a renewed sense of unity that comes from remembering days like today. To our friends of Eastern European and Central European ancestry, we grieve at your losses and your personal stories and connections to the most difficult time in human history, and we promise to always stand alongside you to fight the tyranny of evil and those who would commit crimes against humanity. Thank you so much for being here today. May God bless you, and may God bless Alberta. Immediately following our ceremony today, our platform guests, members of the Assembly, may join us here. We'll move some chairs where we can take a couple of photographs on the grand staircase of the Assembly to commemorate this day. And I'd like to invite all guests to please enjoy the tea and coffee immediately behind you that has been provided. Thank you very much for joining us today.